Welcome to the How to Learn Spanish podcast. My name is Levi Flint, and in this episode of the podcast, we're going to talk about the 4 books that I recommend you buy and add to your library of Spanish learning materials. This is going to be a part 1 video. In the part 2 video, I'm going to expand and get a little bit more niche with some of the books that I recommend you pick up. They're going to be a little bit more advanced, but at this stage of where you should be at this point in your Spanish learning process, these are the books that I recommend. Before we get started with this episode of the podcast, I just want to remind you that I have a course called Fluency Hour. It goes hand in hand with this podcast. So this podcast is a great supplement to Fluency Hour. And Fluency Hour, I'm teaching you how to learn Spanish, how to go from 0 to an intermediate level of fluency. And in this course, I'm sending you an email on a daily basis. It's going to contain lessons, methodology, and also an assignment for the day. You're also going to have access to a Facebook group where you're going to be there for life. As long as you're on Facebook, you can ask questions. I always have that open, so I will probably answer your Spanish question within 24 hours at the most, probably way less. Also, on top of that, you have access to a video library, continuously growing video library of Spanish learning content that I'm updating as often as possible. So lots of good stuff. And I think it's a phenomenal place to begin. So check that out. Go to MexicanFluency.com. That's my main website. All things Spanish. You can check that out there. Let's get started. So today I'm talking about, like I said, the books that I'm going to recommend you to pick up. All these books are pretty cheap. All of them, I believe, as of right now, they can be found on Amazon, either new or used for a very reasonable price. And as you can see, I have books behind me. If you're watching the video, I have books over here as well. And a lot of them are language-related books. So let's begin with book number 1. So the first book I recommend you pick up and add to your Spanish learning library is going to be Lonely Planet's phrasebook, Mexican Spanish phrasebook. Okay, so this is a little travel phrasebook, as you can see if you're watching the video. If you're just listening to the podcast, just know that it is a tiny little mini guidebook that has a lot of good vocabulary, a lot of phrases, a lot of English pronunciation breakdown, so it gives you an idea of exactly how to pronounce the phrase or the word. And in the back, there's a nice little glossary, so you can use this as a little bit of a simple English to Spanish dictionary. This is phenomenal for reading 1 to 2 little pages per day or every other day, jotting this down, putting these new words and expressions into your Anki, the ones that you find the most useful. This is a nice resource. It's very cheap. I've had this guy forever. And obviously, if you're learning Mexican Spanish, which is my focus, and the one I recommend, but again, there's so many different types of Spanish out there. It just depends on, like I said in a previous episode, I talk about picking dialects. That's a totally personal decision. There's not a right answer. The whole idea is just to pick one. So if you're doing Puerto Rican Spanish or Argentinian Spanish or whatever, you can probably dig deep and find something that is similar to this guy. Okay. Book number 2. I recommend you pick up a Spanish dictionary, but a Spanish to Spanish dictionary. I like this guy right here because it's small. This is the Larousse Diccionario del Español Moderno. Okay. It's really, it has all the words that you need to find. The really, really colloquial slang stuff may or may not be in here. We'll talk about that in a future episode. But all of the core essential stuff is in here. And it's a Spanish to Spanish dictionary. Okay, so you may, if you're studying Spanish, you probably already have some sort of English to Spanish dictionary, or you just get on to an online dictionary, which is totally fine. Wordreference.com is a phenomenal online dictionary. No problem with that. Google Translate, it's getting better. You can use that too, but I like using, and I have always been recommended as a Spanish student to eventually transition over to a Spanish to Spanish dictionary. And the reason for this is because this will help you pull you away once you are at a high beginner, low intermediate level. This will pull you away from being entirely focused on Spanish to English translations. So you need to move beyond that to where you're just thinking in Spanish. And once you can do that, you're really moving into a great territory that's much closer to fluency than you would be otherwise. Your average Spanish learner is just going to obsessively do the English to Spanish translations, and they're going to struggle forever. I promise you. I know this from experience. Because before I was recommended to move to an English to Spanish dictionary, I did the same thing. Or to move away from an English to Spanish dictionary, I did the same thing. So get to that point, you're going to start doing this, and you can be putting in the new Spanish words and Spanish definitions into your Anki as well, or just paper flashcards, whatever you like to use. Highly recommended. Okay. The next book, and I think I mentioned this one in a previous episode, but I recorded the episode last year, or early this year, when I talk about grammar. This is the Essential Spanish Grammar Guide by Seymour Resnick. Again, you can find this anywhere. Amazon. It's ultra thin, ultra small. You can tell I'm a fan of simplicity and minimalistic type of books, because when you're learning a language, you don't want to be only spending too much time with a book. Like, you need to be speaking the language. You need to be using it in real time. You need to be having conversations. You need to be doing stuff like Anki and, all the stuff that I talk about in this podcast. You need to be doing more interactive type of things rather than just reading a book. But this is the best grammar guide that I have ever seen. It's the most practical by far. It has all the grammar you need to communicate in spoken Spanish and even in written Spanish. This has all the essentials. And it's very easy to consume. So you can just go through 1 to 2 pages every other day. Just work your way through little by little by little. Familiarize yourself with how the grammar works. And there's also places in here too where you can do exercises, and you can have a little pencil and be writing in your exercises or writing your answers to the exercises. And that's really helpful as well, I feel like, when learning grammar. Last thing I'll say, and I mentioned this before in a previous episode, when you're learning grammar, like, that is not the end all be all, the goal of studying Spanish, right? Like, in my opinion, it is essential to study grammar because you need some sort of building block, blueprint, skeleton to work with, right? You need to have some sort of order, or your grammar is always going to suck and you're going to speak bad. You're going to speak poorly. Like, you'll know a lot of vocabulary, but your grammar will just be a mess. So you need this, but I also have another grammar book back here. And if you're watching the video, you'll see that this thing is a monster. A new reference of a new reference grammar of modern Spanish. Massive. You don't want this. I only got this because, I went and did a master's degree in teaching Spanish. Literally anybody else should not get this book, in my opinion. Stick to the simple stuff. That's all you need. Okay. The last book in this part 1 podcast episode that I recommend is going to be 501 Spanish Verbs. 501 Spanish Verbs is a gigantic book. It's really thick, but it's a great reference guide. And again, there are websites out there. Just Google Spanish conjugations, and you're going to find great websites that are going to do this for free, and you can just pull it up online. All this contains is verbs, all the most used verbs, 500 most used verbs in Spanish, A to Z, and see if there is a Z. Well, you get the point. A to whatever it is. And so, for example, you have here the verb acabar. And the verb acabar is going to be fully broken down into all of its conjugations. So you have the 7 simple tenses, you have the 7 compound tenses, you have the imperative tense, you have some examples down at the bottom. But it's kind of nice to have this guide, I found. I didn't use it all the time, but early on in my Spanish learning journey, it was great to whip it out, especially when I was studying grammar. Or in this case, you can be doing Duolingo. And as you're doing Duolingo assignments, you will more or less be told what tense you're working with in a particular lesson, in a particular group. So you can bust this out, have this on your table, and you can be looking at a different verb and seeing exactly how it's conjugated in a particular tense. And you can be learning that and how that works at the same time. Again, you can be essentially accessing all the information here through a website. I don't have the website off the top of my head, but there's a lot of them that do it exactly the same as this book. But I think it's nice to have a book, to have a physical copy in hand right in front of me while I'm doing some learning online on a computer or on my smartphone. I can have this guy right here just to be able to reference as I'm going. But it will be hugely useful. You have to learn a lot of conjugations when you're learning a language. It's inevitable. So I recommend this guy. And you can get it for used on Amazon, I'm sure, or on eBay or something like that for dirt cheap. All in all, these 4 books right here, they're very, very affordable. Nothing crazy like a college textbook where they, vastly overcharge you. Nothing like that at all. So that's my recommendation for this part 1 video. I definitely have a few other books that I do want to recommend, but let's keep it short and sweet. Hopefully these books, you find them useful like I did, or like I have. They're great references, and I think that it's great to have a few essential core books. So you have a small little language learning library. I have a small library over here for Brazilian Portuguese and also for French. And again, you're not going to use it every single time or every day, but it's great to have on hand. We do so much of our stuff online. It's cool, I think, to be able to like whip something like this out, have something in hand, be able to reference stuff, find it, and study that way, along with what we're doing digitally. I think it's kind of like a nice break, just to mix it up a little bit. So anyways, that is all for this episode, guys. Just want to remind you guys that I am on social media. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. I've been putting a lot more work into TikTok recently. The algorithm is way the hell more friendly at this point in time. I'm getting a lot more views and a lot more interaction there. So check it out. I'm doing daily lessons there, teaching a lot of Mexican words, a lot of Mexican slang and phrases. Rennie, my wife, is helping me out with that as well. So it's pretty cool and a great resource for you guys learning. Also, make sure to check out Fluency Hour if you want to join the course. We do a new cohort every single month. And again, you're getting daily emails. You're getting emails directly from me where I'm going to help you build a foundation, teach you how to learn Spanish. You're going to build the foundation, and by the end of the month, you'll be in a really great groove learning Spanish on a daily basis, and you'll know where to go. You'll know exactly how to do it, and you can pair it with this podcast. And in my opinion, it's the perfect thing for somebody who is like self-motivated and disciplined and is able to take this knowledge and just run with it and go learn Spanish. I mean, that's all you need. Literally all you need. Everything I'm giving you in the podcast and in my course, Fluency Hour, it's everything that you need to make the dream a reality. I promise. And I can say that with a guarantee because I have done it. I have done it all. So that's it. Muchas gracias. And if you have any questions, email me at levi@mexicanfluency.com. Nos vemos en el próximo episodio. See you next episode, guys. Bye.